This is the best part of the week where one of you guys writes in. We try and give our advice and help out as much as we can. So, the letterhead of today's episode is I tried every budgeting app, then this happened. Alrighty, let's see what we got. I'm over it. No howdy on this one? Interesting. All right, okay. I'm over it. Like done done. I'm over the apps, the color-coded spreadsheets, over the just try this one system advice from people who swear this is the thing that finally made budgeting click. I've tried them all. Zero-based budgets, envelope methods, roundups, percent rules, you name it, I gave it a fair shot. Maybe you guys have tried some of those as well. And yet here I am, still buried under consumer debt, still feeling stupid every time I log into my bank account, still wondering how can I be trying this hard and somehow feel this stuck? What really broke me wasn't one big purchase or some dramatic mistake. It was the slow drip of frustration, the constant feeling of being mostly fine week to week, but never actually getting ahead. I'd come up short $40, $50, shrug, move a little money around, promise I'd do better next month, and move on. No urgency, no clarity, just quiet avoidance dressed up as optimism. Then came December 26th. You know the day. Everyone's technically working, but nothing meaningful happens. Emails are dead, meetings are fake. It's that weird limbo where the holidays are over, but real life hasn't really turned back on yet. So instead of the doom scrolling or pretending to be productive, I cracked open Excel. No fancy template, no app, just a blank sheet. And for the first time ever, I didn't just budget a month. I budgeted the entire calendar year, all 12 months, every bill, every subscription, every irregular expense I normally forget. Car maintenance, gifts, insurance, travel, sinking funds, the stuff that always sneaks up and wrecks my plans. If something only happens once a year, well, I divide it by 12. No hiding it, no pretending it doesn't count. And when I finished, I just stared at the number. If everything goes the way I want it to, if I live the life I think is reasonable, not extravagant, I'm $21,000 short for this year. Not $50 short, not it's a tight month. 21,000 big ones. And here's the weird part. Instead of panic, I felt relief. For the first time, the problem wasn't undeniable. Correction. For the first time, the problem was undeniable, concrete, and honest. I couldn't rationalize it away or smooth it over with transfers and vibes. This wasn't a discipline issue or a motivation issue. This was a math issue. Finally, the fog lifted. Now I actually have something to work with. I can start cutting with intention instead of guilt. I can decide what matters and what doesn't. I can look at my ideal life on paper and say, okay, what do I need to change? Income? Lifestyle? Expectations? I don't know if this is the answer for me, but for the first time in a long time, I feel momentum instead of shame. I'm not broken. The budget wasn't broken. I just wasn't looking far enough ahead. And honestly, that feels like a win. From budgeting tried, motivation died, I'm over the apps and I'm done with the gaps. Well, how about that?
Wow,
How
that's pretty
that
cool.
very cool.
I've been working on a financial planning framework, and I'm not ready to share it yet, but it's ROCS. It's the acronym ROCS, and the first thing in ROC stands for reality. I think too many people, when they're financially stressed, they have zero financial clarity. They're running on assumptions, on hopes, on beliefs, on this is what I think it is in my best case scenario. And without being able to get down to baseline truth, the actual physics of money. can we ever really take the first step forward? So, to our writer, first off, I want to thank you for writing this. What you're describing isn't a failure at all. It sounds like what you were at was a moment of pure exhaustion. And there's a big difference between being exhausted and failing. Most people don't quit because they're lazy. They quit because they've been trying alone for too long. I think it's okay. And I think one of the biggest things that we try to do here at the Fi Guys is normalize something right away. Being over it is often the moment right before clarity. Your burnout that you're feeling, that's feedback. It's your brain saying, you need to stop guessing and show me the actual truth. We have to live in reality.
It's like they say, it's always darkest right before dawn. You know, I gotta squeeze in a Batman quote every now and again. I gotta do it. I gotta do it. But yes, like Chris said, it's always darkest right before dawn. And hey, some of us are in that really dark spot. But if we can hold out, if we can innovate, if we can change what needs to be changed and get honest feedback and honest data, well, then we can actually make serious progress. And it sounds like this person, well, doesn't get much simpler and hard data than what they've got.
Yeah. I think this is the hard part about it when it comes to these budgeting apps, when it comes to these zero-based budgets or the envelope method is they all work, but you have to find what works for you. And I think for this person, the reason that none of those apps worked isn't because they're bad with money, like those apps try to tell you to believe. It's because they kept thinking too short term. Week to week budgeting lets you just survive. But for this person, year long visibility let them actually lead their own life. You know, and for some people, it's going to be different. Maybe there are people whose finances, whose budgets only allow them to survive right now. But when you're only focused and you're driving the car and it's so foggy that you're only looking 5 feet, 10 feet in front of you, it makes it a lot harder to plan in the future. Whoa, what turn am I going to make? Like, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about like, how am I not going to crash in the next 10 feet? So when this individual was able to find that $21,000 gap, yeah, I'm sure it was super uncomfortable, but it was also a gift because it got them to realize that you didn't create a bigger problem. You finally uncovered what the real freaking problem was. And awareness doesn't make things worse. It just removes the illusion. It removes the facade. It removes the mask that we were telling ourselves to say, like, oh, I don't know what the real problem is. At least with this information, we know what it is and we can start to figure out a plan to fix it.
Yeah. And I think that's the important part, right? Is once you have the information that, hey, we know that, like, we all know that there's something going wrong, right? But a lot of us sweep it under the rug. What I love most about this is they didn't hide anymore. They stared into the abyss and they attacked it. They grabbed it, right? And they really faced their fear. And that's an inspiration to us all, an example to us all that, well, the fear we're running from isn't actually as scary as we think. It's just a number. It's just a thing. It's just this or that. It's not a scary monster hiding under your bed. And what I love most is how they attacked it. And they didn't, I mean, they didn't cry. They didn't complain. They didn't do anything. They're like, this is the mission now. This is what we need to do. And I love that. That's just the attitude all of us need in this new year.
And speaking of things that I love that the person said in order to find the truth, what they did is they reflected on what their ideal income in life looked like. And that's pretty huge because I think what most people do is they cut first, and they ask questions later. What our reader did or writer did is they did the exact opposite. They defined the life that they wanted, and then they let the numbers respond honestly. I think that's one of the hardest things. I think when you go to a financial planner, when you go to someone for advice, they
Mhm.
tell you, oh, just do this. Just do this and you'll get where you want to go. But what you really need to do, I think, and this is what I've always tried to approach is say, like, this is what you're doing now. And what you're doing, this is where this is going to lead to. Do you want to make a change or do you want it to continue? Because if you're sitting there in this fantasy, refusing to deal with reality, you're never really going to be able to implement the changes because the emotional resonance is never there. And here's an important framework. You're not short because you're irresponsible. You're short on funds because your current life is asking more from your income than it can provide for now. And now that you know that, that means that you have the ability to make a change, to either lower what it is that you want in life or to go out and make more money because money does have physics to it. And by physics, I mean cause and effect. There's a natural order. You can't say I'm going to make $100,000 a year, but my lifestyle is going to be $200,000 a year. You can do it for a little while, but it's not sustainable, not in the long term.
Not at all. Not at all. And that's what's so important about addressing it in the now and not sweeping it under the rug. It's that the habits that we have, even the habits that I have today that are healthy for me in my 26, 27-year-old body, right, are not the habits I should probably be having when I'm 65 or 70, right? You got to adjust. You got to always be adjusting and always be kind of shifting and moving with the times. And like we talked about last episode, discipline and flexibility, they go hand in hand, but they're equally as important as one another. You have to be flexible and you have to be disciplined to attack the problem head on, not from the side.
Yeah. Speaking of like attacking the problem, I think a lot of people, when they figure out finally what's wrong, they see a gap and they immediately feel shame about themselves. Like, oh, I'm bad with money. I'm stupid. I'm all these things. But what our writer did and what I want our listeners to try to do is when they see a gap, they see an opportunity. They can see a moment where they say, okay, now I can work with this. Now that I know what's going on, I can work with this. And that mindset shift of seeing a problem, or rather than seeing a problem, seeing an opportunity, that changes everything. And that's something that I struggle with a lot because every time that a problem comes up, I'm like, oh, big problem going to derail everything. It's over. Rather than seeing like what some of the biggest founders, some of the biggest people that we look up to as entrepreneurs, they saw big quote unquote problems and they're like, how can I use this to my advantage?
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, right? That's the difference between wolves and sheep, right? That's the difference between people with killer instincts, people without killer instincts, right? Everything is an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity. And that's one of the mental frameworks that is very powerful. That is good to have on the holster, right? When things go bad, it's like Jocko says, right? Hey, we didn't get this promotion. Good. We can be better at what we do now, right? We didn't get the gear we wanted. Good. We'll train harder with the stuff we have to be even more proficient. It's having that mental framework, like we were talking about, where, yeah, things might suck on paper. Good. It gives us an opportunity. The best people in life don't take life seriously, but they play the game hard. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of have to do in this new year is let's take things serious, but not too seriously, right? Let's live a little. Let's make sure that we understand this is a game we're playing and it's a game we play against ourselves. It's not about beating yourself. It's about improving yourself. And that's one of the things that we try to get across every podcast is 1% better every day. And sometimes the 1% better, like for me yesterday, I we ordered donuts at work. I had too many. I had way too I had way too many. You don't want to know how many donuts. I had too many donuts. But the day before, so I had set a plan, right? This is what I have for breakfast because it has the nutrients, it has the protein, and it keeps my energy regulated, right? And this is what I have for lunch. Perfect day. Next day, terrible day. But it gave me the opportunity to see what the other side was, to see what am I missing? And while I failed that day eating what I needed to eat to hit my goals, I got to see what failure looks like. I got to see what it felt like, what the crashes feel like, right? And that's why it's so important to fail often and to learn from those failures.
Yeah, something that I'm dealing with right now as we try to plan out this Italy trip with my wife and everything is we have to cut back on a lot of our expenses. And what I'm kind of hearing in this person and that they cut out all of the budgets is that sometimes cutting doesn't mean punishment. Sometimes cutting your expenses means alignment. And I have to work with this is my opportunity and this is our listeners' opportunity too. It's rather than saying this is what I have to give up, you get to say this is what I'm buying on purpose versus accidentally. This is what I'm choosing. And I think for our listener is the biggest win here isn't that they made a spreadsheet. It's not that they like they did it. That's the first part, but is that they stopped lying to themselves in the small little ways every day. That's just $40, just $50. I'll just move some money around. It's totally fine. No more. It'll probably just work out if I just keep on, hoping and cross my fingers hard enough and my toes. Because our writer here, they replaced hope with an actual plan. And that plan actually gives you real confidence, not just belief, because hope is important. Hope gets you out of bed. Hope is the thing that allows you to keep on trying. But if you just rely on hope the entire way, it's going to be very, very difficult because hope waxes and wanes just like your emotions.
It's like using a knife to eat a soup, right? It, it, it can't be done. It can't be. You're going to cut yourself, right? The knife wasn't designed for soup, just as hope wasn't designed to be a plan. Hope is not a strategy. Like Chris said, hope gets you up in the morning. It makes you optimistic about what's to come, about the belief, the self belief in other people and in yourself. And it's a very powerful tool. You can never give up hope. But like we say, hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy.
And there's one more thing I want to tell to our writer, and I hope that you can hear this really clearly, is that you're not behind. You're early on the part where money starts making sense. And that's pretty damn cool because most people never zoom out far enough to have this moment. They never look at the big picture. They never have clarity because they live in the illusion that they've created. They live in the matrix and what their mind has constructed. So you need to be able to keep this lens and revisit the year view regularly. Try to take a wider perspective. We say it often, and I don't think that people understand what I'm saying when I say that. But when we take that wider perspective, we can see the truth. And remember, you don't need motivation because you already found the truth. Now it's just about making those small, honest adjustments over time until we get to where we want to go. And I think lastly, just not only to our writer, but to everyone who's listening to this, you're not alone in this. If this letter resonated with you, or if our listener writing in sounds good to you, or like sounds like something that you need, that's not a coincidence. That's community. This stuff gets lighter when we stop carrying it by ourselves. Because you don't have to, but we only do if we keep this all in the dark. So open up, talk to somebody, be a part of the Five Guys community, be a part of any community. I don't really care. Get out there and like try to help yourself because you are the most important thing in dictating where your life goes. You and the decisions you make.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.